Thank you, Chair. Minister, I'd like to go to a new issue now, and if I could refer you to Exhibit QQ 1.4.
Page 5 of the bundle.
That's page 5, that's correct, Chair. Which is a report entitled Marikana Events Shamed All, Shabangu. And if I can ask that we look at the paragraph that says Shabangu, it's the one just before the end of the page. Shabangu said, having spent countless hours either in meetings or consultations with the affected parties, she had come to understand the events that started from a wildcat strike by about 3,000 rock drillers on August 10.
To interrupt you, the report that you're quoting from is, of course, a report of the speech she made in Parliament.
That's correct.
We have the full text of that speech from pages 22 and following.
That's correct.
And the passage you're referring to is on page 23.
That's correct, Chair. I'm going to that. It's Exhibit QQ 1.10 and page 23 of that speech. Of the bundle, of the bundle. Exhibit QQ 1.10. And if we can go to page 23 of the bundle. Now, this address, Minister, was given at the special parliamentary debate following the tragedy at Marikana on the 21st of August, 2012.
We have the right page now on the screen, but I think, yes, that's it.
Isn't that correct, Minister?
Yes.
Now, if we look at paragraph 3 on this page, you'll see that there you state to Parliament that having spent countless hours, either in meetings or consultations with the affected parties, I've come to understand the events that started from a wildcat strike by approximately 3,000 rock drillers on the 10th of August, a day after we celebrated our National Women's Day. So this speech was given on the 21st of August, and you're telling Parliament that obviously between the 16th and the 21st, you spent countless hours either in meetings or consultations with the affected parties. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, please. Now, can we deal with those countless hours that you spent in meetings or consultations? If you look at your statement, Minister, that's quadruple C5. And specifically at page 7 of quadruple C5. You set out in paragraph 17 of your statement that you called the minister to obtain better information from him. This is presumably immediately after you became aware of what transpired on the 16th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you say at paragraph 18 you decided to travel to Marikana the following day in order to establish the facts, and that you were accompanied by senior officials from the Department of Mineral Resources. Do you see that?
That's correct.
Sorry, you say that you arrived in Marikana at 8 o'clock in the morning of the 17th. And from paragraph 19 onwards, you describe the stakeholders that you interacted with. And if you look at paragraph 19, you say we were initially briefed by Lonmin management and that the briefing lasted for an hour. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You say in paragraph 20, we were requested to meet with the local representatives of NUM, and that NUM presented their views to the DMR delegation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You say also at 21 that that's the DMR delegation together with other government officials, were then briefed by SABC, who clearly informed you of their role in what transpired on the 16th. Is that correct, Minister?
That's correct.
Apart from those stakeholders, apart from Lonmin and NUM and SABC, who else did you see before the 21st of August in order to understand what transpired at Marikana?
Well, we had various meetings with the unions or the parties affected or involved in the process of after the 16th.
Minister, before the 21st,
That's correct. That's what I'm referring to.
you tell us in your statement that you met with Lonmin, you met with NUM, and you met with SABC. Now, what didn't you mention in your statement? Who did you meet before the 21st in order to understand what transpired in Marikana?
I don't understand your question.
I'm saying, is there anyone else that you met that you don't mention in your statement in order to try and get an understanding of what transpired?
I'm saying stakeholders, and stakeholders refer to people we engage with on a regular basis. So if you were in my space, when I talk about stakeholders, Mr. Chairman, you'd understand I mean labor, I mean government departments, yes, and business.
Yeah,
That is why when we call them stakeholders, Mr. Chairman, there's an understanding amongst ourselves to say which people are we referring to.
All right, so when you talk to Parliament about affected parties, and that's the terminology you use, Minister, it's affected parties.
Yes, those are the affected parties.
So can you tell us who those affected parties
It's
were?
business through the Chamber of Mines, it's labor through the various unions and government departments, which is us and labor now.
So you're saying it was the Chamber of Mines, it was labor, you say the unions.
Yes.
Before the 21st of August, Minister, did you meet with both unions involved?
With all unions, not just both. All unions, Solidarity, WASA, AMCU, NUM.
Minister, at this stage we're talking about, and if you go back to your speech, we're talking about the affected parties in respect of the Marikana tragedy. So there were really two affected unions. Now, my question to you is, before the 21st of August, so between the 16th of August, or even before that, before the 21st of August, did you consult with both unions who were affected parties?
Mr. Chairman, I want to state clearly. Before the 21st, as asked, we met, when I say meeting with convinced stakeholders, we met with the unions which are organizing in the mining industry. Not only two, there are four.
You met with all four?
With all four.
Including AMCU?
Including AMCU.
All right, so that's at a general level. Minister, your testimony today, and this is very important, your testimony is that before the 21st you met with AMCU specifically.
Mr. Chairman, she's confusing me. Because I'm saying we met with NUM, AMCU,
yes.
Solidarity, WASA.
Yes.
That's the labor.
She's made it quite clear before the 21st she met, amongst others, with AMCU.
And just to understand, Minister, because that's at a general level. Now, my question to you is specifically in the context of the Marikana tragedy, and specifically before the 21st of August. Did you meet with AMCU?
I'm confused. I don't understand the question. Because after the incident of the 16th, we started meeting with AMCU and all other unions, not AMCU on one-on-one.
But you were at meetings with, amongst others, AMCU. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Between the 16th and the 21st of August?
Between the 16th.
16th is Thursday, the day when
before the
34
16th.
died.
That's why I'm saying he must be specific, because if he talks about before the 16th, or before, yes,
So
before the 16th.
She says before the 21st. And before the 21st, she says, did you meet with, amongst others, AMCU? I've understood you to say yes. Yes, I misunderstood. You see, And the real question, I think, that you're being asked is, in the period between the tragedy on the 16th when 34 people died and the 21st, did you have meetings with, amongst others, AMCU? That's your question.
Before
am I right?
the 16th.
No.
After.
the 16th.
After the 16th, we
Remember,
met.
The 16th is the day when you were
Yes.
at another meeting in Brakpan, I think, Richard.
Yes.
And that's the day when the killing took place. The killings took place of the 34 people. That was the culmination of the events, Marikana. And the question that you're being asked, as I understand it, is from that day, the 16th, Thursday the 16th, to the 21st, did you meet with, amongst others, AMCU?
The meeting I'm referring to on para 22, where I say we convened a meeting where we met with the unions except AMCU on the 18th.
So your testimony today, Minister, is that when you tell Parliament that you spent countless of hours in meetings with affected parties in order to understand the situation in Marikana, that one of the parties who you met with was AMCU, specifically in that context.
I don't understand your question.
Have a go. I was wrong when I said you were at Brakpan on the 16th. You were in fact at Boksburg.
No, but we're having a conference on
in
the
Boksburg.
18th.
You were in a
Yes,
conference
on the
in Boksburg
16th.
on the 16th. And that's where you were when you got the news.
The news in the afternoon.
In the afternoon.
Yes.
Of the shootings and the killing of 34 people. Now, I think what Ms. Pillay wants to know from you is from that time, the 16th when you were at Boksburg, to the 21st, did you have meeting with, amongst others, AMCU? Is that your question, Ms. Pillay? Ms. Pillay, is that your question?
Yes, Chair, that's the question.
We
Okay.
met on the 18th with the stakeholders, as I say, because we had never had a meeting with AMCU, and we didn't even have any details about them. We met as stakeholders, myself and the Minister of Labour, met with the existing unions, which were NUM, Solidarity, and WASA.
AMCU was an existing union. It's been in existence for some years.
Well, in our negotiations,
Registered with the Department of Labour.
well, with us, we had never had a meeting with them.
I see. Now, you see, a stakeholder in an ordinary meaning of the word means someone who's got a stake, someone who holds a stake. And I would have thought that AMCU would have qualified for invitation to a stakeholders meeting because they undoubtedly held a stake in the mining industry, and in particular, they held a stake in what was happening at Lonmin because they even had some rights, not wage negotiation rights, but certain organizational rights at least the career shaft of Lonmin. So they were certainly stakeholders in the ordinary sense of the word, and Mr. Matunjwa, the president of AMCU, was invited by Lonmin, together with Mr. Zakwana, the president of NUM, to address the strikers on the 15th, the Wednesday, which he did. And he went back on the Thursday and he addressed the strikers again. And in fact, to his eternal credit, pleaded with the strikers on his bended knees to leave the Kopi because he was afraid they were going to be killed. So, on any definition, I would have thought, AMCU qualified to be a stakeholder. Would you agree with that, or am I misunderstanding the situation?
Well, Mr. Chairman, at that point, when the incident happened, our understanding was that AMCU was not existing. That's the information we had. There were workers' committees, and that's the issue raised with us, not AMCU as an institution or as an organization which was representing workers. What was said to us is that there were workers' committees in Lonmin.
Had you never heard of AMCU at all before that?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Now, there was trouble previously at Impala, wasn't it?
Well,
the
Mr.
platinum mine at Impala, and then later trouble at Amplatz.
Well,
now, as Minister of Mineral Resources, wasn't it your duty to find out and keep in touch with what was happening at Impala and Amplatz?
Well, at Impala and at Implatz, again, it was workers' committees. And when we engaged with them, right from the beginning, they said it's workers' committees. And there was a tension between workers' committees and management. There was not AMCU. Because we also have to look at that to say, at what point was therefore AMCU brought on board as recognized by the companies themselves, as representing the workers?
Never mind when they were recognized by the companies. All the news reports about the trouble with Impala and Amplatz, none of those reports at any stage mentioned that AMCU was involved. There was friction between NUM, who were the people in possession, they were the recognized union, and AMCU, who were the new union, trying to get recognition and oust NUM and take NUM's place. Was that not mentioned in any of the reports you read about Impala, the trouble with Impala and Amplatz?
Well, the report we got on a regular basis was workers' committee.
No reports about AMCU at all?
No, not to us.
I see.
Minister, we are in possession of an interview that you conducted with Karima Brown, specifically on the Marikana matter. Do you remember the interview you did with Karima Brown?
Yes, on the 17th of August.
That's correct. And in that interview, you informed Ms. Brown that you first came to know of AMCU during the strike at Implatz, at Impala. Chair, the evidence leaders are in possession of that interview, and we can play it unless the minister accepts that she did say that during the interview.
Sorry, to be fair to the Minister, in terms of the rules we've laid down in this Commission, if you want to confront a witness with a statement or a document of any kind, the witness should get an opportunity to see it. So I think it's only fair that it should be shown to the witness before she answers questions further. And I don't understand why we weren't given it beforehand either, but anyway, or the Minister, we won't go there now. I would insist upon it being shown to us and to the Minister before she answers.
Chair, we can arrange to do that. In the meantime, Minister, may I refer you to your statement? And if I can ask that CC5, it's quadruple C5, be put up on the screen. And if we could go to paragraph 9 of the statement. Now, Minister, apart from the fact that you've testified today that you met with AMCU as a union before the 21st of August, besides that fact, let's look at what you say in your statement. You say, I first heard of the unrest at Lonmin mine, Marikana, around 9 August 2012. According to media reports at the time, the unrest was started by wage demands by a group of the mine workers employed at the Lonmin mine. There were further reports of rivalry between two of the labor unions who represented workers at Lonmin, namely AMCU and NUM. That was how I initially understood the problem. So clearly from this, Minister, by the 9th of August, you were not only aware of the existence of AMCU, but you understood the issue to be a rivalry between two of the labor unions who represented workers at Lonmin. What's your comment to that?
That's what we're reading in the papers.
This is what you say in your statement, Minister.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, because let me also, Mr. Chairman, explain the situation. When we're engaging with the various companies and trying to understand the situation, there was no AMCU. That's what I'm saying. But you would hear that AMCU is trying to organize itself. And if we also have to confirm that later, even when the strike or the situation and violence had stopped, there was a continuous engagement by the companies and AMCU in finding a recognition agreement. And what we knew was that there were workers' committees which were at that point in time negotiating, but AMCU as a union or as a force, as one would understand, was not part of our engagement. And the issue of the rival arises because when the fights were on, there was the issue of AMCU and NUM fighting amongst themselves. Hence, some of the members who died, we were told were NUM members.
And yet you testified just a few minutes ago, Minister, when I specifically asked the question. You testified that before the 21st of August, you liaised with AMCU as a stakeholder. Those were your words. And
Well,
I repeatedly asked the question, and you repeatedly answered the question in that way, that you met with AMCU as a stakeholder, as you did all the other unions. That was your evidence.
Well, later, indeed, we did meet. I might have made a mistake. As you know, that these are issues of the past for me.
So are you now changing your evidence, Minister? Do you accept that before the 21st of August, you did not meet with AMCU?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I've said because of the way she was asking, indeed, we never met AMCU before. That is why I was saying she must clarify herself.
So what you said a minute ago was you suggested you may have made a mistake. I must say it does sound as if you did make a mistake, which you are now correcting. Would that be fair? The question that still puzzles me is why you called a stakeholders meeting, presumably to try to find a solution to the problem, why you didn't regard AMCU as being a party who, A, had a stake in what was happening, and B, would be in a position to contribute to the resolution of the problem.
Well, Mr. Chairman, for us, AMCU, we had never met before. We've had regular meetings with the various stakeholders, and AMCU was never there.
And apart from the exclusion of AMCU, Minister, before the 21st of August, and please, before the 21st of August, how did you engage, or did you engage with the strikers?
I didn't understand your question.
You say to Parliament that you had countless meetings with the affected parties. Those were your words. Now, my question to you is, when you go before Parliament on the 21st of August and you say that you've had countless meetings with affected parties, did you meet the strikers during any of these countless meetings?
Well, I can't remember. What I know is that by the time we went to Parliament, the first meeting we had was with the regular stakeholders, where we agreed to include AMCU.
Minister, by the 21st, 44 people had died. 34 of them killed on the 16th. Is your testimony before this commission that you cannot recall whether you met with strikers when you went to Marikana after the 16th?
I never went to Marikana to meet with the strikers.
You went to try and understand what had transpired. In the course of that exercise, did you engage with any of the strikers?
Well, all workers were on strike. We did meet with NUM.
The question was, did you meet with any of the strikers? Because we know, Minister, and that's been the testimony before this commission, that the strikers didn't recognize NUM as a legitimate vehicle to raise their concerns. Did you meet with any of the strikers before you went to Parliament on the 21st of August and said that you had spent countless of hours in meetings with the affected parties?
Mr. Chairman, I can't remember that. I think I've answered. When on the 18th, when we meet, we agreed that we're going to meet with everybody, and we tasked the Minister of Labour to bring on board AMCU.
On the 18th, were the strikers represented by anyone at that meeting?
I've already said no, they were not there. Hence, we tasked the Minister of Labour, who clarified at that meeting that AMCU's status with the Department of Labour, it was a registered union.
What it means is when you made your speech in Parliament on the 21st of August, and you said that you had spent countless hours either in meetings or consultations with the affected parties, you didn't mention that there was one affected party whom you hadn't spent countless hours meeting with or consulting with, and that was AMCU. Would that be fair?
That would be fair, Mr. Chairman.
And you also hadn't spent hours, countless or otherwise, meeting with or consulting with the strikers. That's also fair, isn't it?
Well, there were NUM members who were also affected, and we met with the employers who were part of the process.
But I asked about the strikers. Did you spend countless hours or any hours at all, even those that could be counted, in meetings or consultations with the strikers, any of the strikers?
Well, Mr. Chairman, all workers at that time were on strike. So whether it's 2 or 3, they were on strike.
Actually meet with people who were on strike. I understand you met with people from NUM. I take it people like Mr. Zakwana and perhaps Mr. Beleni and some of the other senior people of NUM. But did you actually meet with anyone, whether or not that person was a member of NUM, who had actually been, and was at that stage still, on strike at Lonmin?
Met with individuals who were on strike and who were members of NUM.
On the topic of your interaction with NUM, can I ask that we go to quadruple J6? And while it's being put on the screen, Minister, you will see that this is an email from Tandeka Ngube of Shanduka to Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa and others. Now, can we go to paragraph 4 of this email? You'll see, and I want to just pick up from where it appears both AMCU and NUM are still denying involvement. Do you see that, Minister?
See, it's the paragraph headed HR processing dealing with the strikers, and it's the second sub-paragraph, as it were, in that section. It's the sentence beginning, both AMCU and NUM are still denying.
It says, Minister, both AMCU and NUM are still denying involvement, but NUM has been supportive. And this is the important part, with the president of NUM visiting the operations and liaising with both Minister Shabangu and Mtetwa. Now, in your statement, Minister, you deal with interaction with Mr. Ramaphosa in relation to the events at Marikana. Did you have interaction with Mr. Zakwana about the events at Marikana?
Not to my memory.
So you could have liaised with Mrs. Zakwana around what was happening, the strike at Lonmin, and
Maybe.
it could have happened.
Maybe.
Now, can I ask you, Minister, to look at quadruple Q 1.10?
Hey, 1.10, that's the address to Parliament, or page 10, which is part of, which is actually
No, it's 1.10. That's the
1.10. That's the
No,
address to Parliament. Isn't it? Page 10 is 1.7, which is the interview with Carol Payton in Business Day. Page 10.
That's
Which
right,
do you want?
Chair. I'm sorry, it's actually page 10. I apologize. It's 1.7. 1.7. Quadruple Q 1.7. Chair, I see I have 5 minutes left. I have a few issues that I need to raise with the Minister. Is there any way I could possibly apply for an extension of time?
Mr. Badenhorst didn't use the full time. To be fair, I've asked a number of questions and taken up some of your time. So I think it's only fair that I should give you extra time to make up for my using of some of your time. And there is the time available that Mr. Badenhorst made available to us. So you may carry on. But how long do you need?
Chair, I think I'll probably wrap up in 20 minutes.
All right. Well, I'll give you extra time for that purpose.
I'm indebted, Chair. Minister, if we can look at quadruple Q 1.7, you'll see this is an article by Carol Payton dated the 24th of May 2013. And it refers, Minister, to remarks made by you during a meeting with NUM shop steward and leaders of their central committee. Do you recall this meeting, Minister?
I do.
Now let's see what you said at the meeting. It says in paragraph 1 that Mineral Resources Minister Susan Shabangu on Friday expressed her solidarity and support with the National Union of Mineworkers, which she said was, and quoted, under siege from a force determined to remove it from the face of the earth. Do you recall those remarks, Minister?
I do.
Now, can you tell us what it is that you meant? Which force determined to remove it from the face of the earth were you referring to?
Well, the force I was referring to, hence, if you look at how I qualify it with the Britain, Mr. Chairman, unions. So I was referring to the employers.
You were referring to the employer, to Lonmin.
Exactly.
And you took the view that Lonmin was determined to remove NUM from the face of the earth.
Indeed.
And why did you form that view, Minister? Because the evidence before this commission is that Lonmin was, for example, dealing with a very violent strike, that NUM was directly opposed to that strike, and in fact was encouraging its members to go to work. So why in that context would Lonmin want to remove NUM from the face of the earth?
Well, if you look at behavior of employers and you look at behavior of Lonmin, not only on this particular strike, how they've been handling union matters, it's on the basis of that I was raising it. Because sometimes we tend to look at an environment of a strike on the basis of rivalry amongst unions. And we forget sometimes the key player, which becomes the employer in that space.
Talk about these forces determined to use every trick in the book. Now, what tricks in the book did Lonmin use against NUM, to your knowledge?
Well, it would be the divide and rule amongst the workers, where they are unable to unite amongst themselves, and at the end of the day, the employer wins.
Now, if we can go further down, Minister, in this article, and this is really the thrust of why we say this is relevant to what transpired at Marikana. I want to refer you specifically to the following comments you make, where you say, you are under siege by forces determined to use every trick in the book to remove you from the face of the earth. They want to make sure that no progressive trade union will be permitted in the mining sector. It is only those who are willfully blind who cannot see that the agenda is to defeat and drive the African National Congress from power and reverse the gains of the National Democratic Revolution. Now, can you tell us what it is that you were referring to, Minister?
I'm referring to the forces which normally would come through companies and make sure that they weaken government or they weaken the ANC.
And apart from the fact that Mr. Ramaphosa was a non-executive director of Lonmin and also at that time in the NEC of the ANC, or let me start there, given that fact, did you still see Lonmin as being part of the agenda to defeat and drive the ANC from power and reverse the gains of the National Democratic Revolution?
Well, there were many issues at Lonmin which were happening to workers by management, including racism.
Now, Minister, in that paragraph, I'm going to put to you that you draw a parallel between the forces who are targeting NUM as being the same forces who are seeking to defeat and drive the ANC from power. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So you have drawn here a synergy of interest between NUM and the African National Congress.
That's correct.
So to go back to your involvement in the Marikana tragedy, is it true that even at that time, in August 2012, you saw a synergy of interest between the ruling party which you represent, the ANC, and NUM?
It's not true. I saw the employer continuing to divide workers.
No, Minister, my question is a different one. If, as you accept, in May 2013, you saw a synergy of interest between the ANC and NUM, as you clearly articulate at this meeting, it must be that in August 2012, you saw that synergy of interest.
Interest arises based, Mr. Chairman, on the employer dividing workers, because for a while, Lonmin has been involved in the process of attacking workers.
And that therefore, when NUM is faced with the difficulties it was faced with at Lonmin, you saw that as being reflective of a similar attack on the ANC.
Similar attack on the ANC through workers.
So when you were asked, Minister, to intervene at Marikana by Mr. Ramaphosa, and when you conducted yourself in putting together stakeholder meetings, in holding countless hours of meetings and consultations, your approach was shaped by your understanding that an attack on NUM is analogous to an attack on the ANC.
If you attack workers in South Africa, who contributed to the liberation of South Africa, who were also members of the ANC, we see that as an attack on the ANC.
And I'm going to put to you, Minister, that's the reason why AMCU was not part of the consultative process you engaged in on the 18th of August.
Mr. Chairman, that's her view. I've never said that.
You made this speech to the NUM shop stewards and leaders at their Central Committee meeting in May 2013, which Ms. Payton writes about in the article, which you've been referred to. Were you aware of the fact, which she mentions in the third paragraph of her report, that that week the union, that's NUM, had said that it had lost 44,000 members over the past year, with more losses expected to be confirmed, when Amplats, the world's largest platinum mine, completes a union verification exercise shortly. And then she goes on, the exodus from the NUM followed a violent and chaotic recruitment campaign by the rival Association of Mineworkers and Construction Union, AMCU. Were you aware of that fact, that NUM had said that it lost 44,000 members over the past year, during the very week when you addressed this Central Committee meeting of NUM shop stewards and leaders? And were you aware of the fact that this exodus from NUM, when they'd lost 44,000 members, had followed a violent and chaotic recruitment campaign by AMCU? I know that's two questions, but I hope you can answer them both.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I must say that I was not aware. When I made this speech, it was on the basis of my analysis of the broader situation and its implication to the organization, which is the ANC.
Chair, we have no further questions for this witness.
Well, except that there is that document that you're going to put to her.
Chair, it's not a document. It's footage of
footage of an interview with Ms. Karima Brown.
That's correct, Chair.
So when is that going to be available?
We can during the lunch adjournment make that available to the team for the Minister, Chair.
I see. Well, you were asking her questions about it, so I presume you wish to reserve your rights to question her about that once you've got it available.
I would be grateful, Chair.
So all right, well, thank you. The next party to cross-examine is the LRC, and they have 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Minister. Can I start with the aspect of the interaction with Mr. Ramaphosa, the Deputy President? As I understand your evidence that you gave when you were being cross-examined by the evidence leaders.
Okay, Tommy. Before you carry on, we were given a bundle of documents this morning to be relied on by the LRC. I take it that includes, in respective topics where I didn't allow cross-examination, but we won't go there now. What I want to know is, has the witness been given this bundle of documents? You have?
Yes, we have, Mr. Chairman.
When did she get it? Did she also get it this morning when I got it?
Chair, the documents were emailed to all of the parties in the course of last week. Towards the end of last week.
So the witness has had an opportunity to look.
The physical copy was delivered today, but,
yes, but
the email was circulated last week.
Okay.
On that score, Mr. Chairman...
I didn't want her to be ambushed, as it were, by documents that she hadn't seen before, but it would appear that fear of an ambush is unjustified.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, I'm so sorry,
there are two...
I'm so sorry.
Mr. Bodnos wants to say something. Yes,
I would like to qualify, because I don't know what the questions might be about these documents. There is the fear of ambush, because these documents arrived with us very late. I think it was late on Friday. So I think when my learned friend says last week, it means the end of last week. So I'm not objecting at this stage, because I simply don't know.
No, well, we never tell parties who are calling witnesses what topics they will be asked about in cross-examination, because we think that's unfair to the cross-examining party. But we do request that documents to be relied on should be given to the witness beforehand. And the witness, of course, should have the time to read the documents. I understand.
Yes, I'm so sorry, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify. I'm not saying I understand that we are not told the topics. I'm just telling you the difficulty we have having received them late. If there are going to be questions where the witness needs to consult the document, that may cause a difficulty.
Well,
but we are hopeful that it won't arise.
Yes, if there are problems of that nature, they can be mentioned, and we can do something to try to ensure that there's no prejudice as a result of an ambush. But as you say, it may well be that won't happen, but it's my duty always to seek to protect the witnesses as far as I can against unfair procedures.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I wanted to mention was that there are two speeches that I will be making reference to that were handed in this morning.
The speeches by the witness herself?
By the Minister herself.
Well, she can scarcely be prejudiced by having her own words quoted at her.
Indeed.
If they are correctly reported, of course.
Indeed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, Minister, can I start with by the 15th of August, in the morning, you had the conversation with Mr. Xolani Gwala on SAFM, where, as I understand in your evidence, you told him that this was a labor matter and it must be resolved between management and the workers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, thank you. Now, at that point in time, you had also had, I think on the 14th, according to your statement, a conversation with Mr. Teke, the Deputy President of the Chamber of Mines, who informed you about a possible mediation, although he didn't invite you to facilitate the mediation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes. Now, at this stage, the morning of the 15th of August, it was your view that this was a labor matter to be resolved between management and the workers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes. It was certainly not your view that the police must step in and resolve the situation.
That's correct.
Yes. Now, at that stage of the morning of the 15th, you had not yet met with Mr. Ramaphosa, the Deputy President. Is that correct? At the time you spoke to Mr. Xolani Gwala.
That's correct.
Yes. Now, you met with Mr. Ramaphosa, we know, sometime in the morning of the...
I'm sorry, Mr. Tommy. Before you, and look at Tommy.
Okay, Toby, yeah,
I'll get it right.
I've got it right.
Let's do about the housekeeping. You say you're going to refer to two speeches. You're now moving on to a slightly different topic.
They were handed,
these
they
two
were handed
speeches-
in.
no. Perhaps we should mark them now. The one is, I take it, the address the Minister gave at the opening of the Twist Dry Colliery to Belisha shaft on the 22nd of May 2012. And the other is an address she'd given a month before on the occasion of the launch of the Lonmin Artisan College at Marikana Northwest on the 18th of April. Is that correct? Yes, now,
Correct,
we will
Mr.
mark them quadruple Q3 and quadruple Q4. I take it you want to deal with them in chronological order, do you? So we'll
Yes,
deal with the
they-
Lonmin Artisan College one as quadruple Q3
3.
and the Twistrai Colliery at Tubelisha as quadruple Q4.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So now we've got that out of the way, you can carry on with the
Yes,
questions.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, Minister, I was just on at the time you spoke to Mr. Ramaphosa and what your view or your characterization of the situation was. Now, I want to take you to the discussion that you then have with Mr. Ramaphosa. So let us first look at his account of that discussion. It is in B4, if it could be put up. It was part of the evidence that you gave when you were being cross-examined by Ms. Pillay. B4-2. I think it's no, not that one. It's the email from Mr. Ramaphosa to Mr. Jameson and others. No, it's the later one, at 2:58 p.m. Further down. Yeah, further down. Yeah, further down. Brilliant, that's the one. All right. Now, this is what the Deputy President records was the content of the conversation. The first paragraph, I have just had a discussion with Susan Shabangu in Cape Town. Paragraph 1, she agrees that what we are going through is not a labor dispute. Put a full stop there. Did you agree that what was going on was not a labor dispute?
I've never said it's not a labor dispute.
No, just answer the question. Did you agree in the conversation with Mr. Ramaphosa that what was going on was not a labor dispute?
Mr. Chairman, I've never said it's not a labor dispute.
So is the answer yes or no to my
that
question?
means you didn't agree with Mr.
Yes.
Ramaphosa.
Yes. When he records that you agreed, he is giving an inaccurate recordal.
Come again?
Minister,
Come
I'm
again.
asking you the question. When Mr. Ramaphosa says in the email that you agreed that what was going on was not a labor dispute, he is giving an inaccurate recordal of the conversation.
Yes.
I see. Now, the next sentence, in the same line, she will correct her characterization of what we are experiencing. Did you agree to correct your characterization?
I've indicated earlier on, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, that I had never characterized, or what she's saying that I was going to correct my characterization. I've said I never said that.
This statement is false.
Be polite to call it incorrect.
This is, sorry, I apologize.
He told me.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. This statement is inaccurate, Minister.
Indeed, because it was not, I never even saw it.
Yes, all right. Now, in terms of your recollection of that conversation, the statement is inaccurate.
Well, we never discussed this as it's stated here.
Yes, all right. The second paragraph, she is going into cabinet and will brief the president, as well as get the Minister of Police, Natim Tetwa, to act in a more pointed way. Let's forget about the first part, because we know that to be true. Let's look at the second part. Get the Minister of Police, Natim Tetwa, to act in a more pointed way. Is the statement accurate?
I don't understand what he meant by more pointed way.
There was no conversation that the minister would be made to act in a more pointed way.
I said I'm going to brief the minister and the president. I never said they must act in a pointed way.
All right. Well, so you don't really know where the statement emanates from. I don't want to make problems about inaccuracy. All
Can I
right.
ask you a question about that? The last sentence of that email says, let us keep the pressure on them to act correctly. Did you regard what Mr. Ramaphosa was doing when he was talking to you as being putting pressure on you?
Well, Mr. Chairman, as you can understand, he's the one who was under pressure. So he had to find a way of making sure that his colleagues feel that he's doing work.
Yes. Now, I also want to take you to your statement, which is quadruple C5. Now, particularly at paragraph 11, that is when you recount the conversation with Mr. Ramaphosa. At 11B, you say here, he shared his view that what was happening then in Marikana could no longer be characterized as a labor dispute, but that the issue had escalated to involve acts of criminality. Now, let's look at what you say was your reaction to that statement. I agreed with him, and if you put a full stop there are two things that he says. The first is that what is happening is not a labor dispute, well, can no longer be characterized as a labor dispute.
I'm not sure that summary is entirely correct. What he says is it could no longer be characterized as a labor dispute. It has escalated to involve acts of criminality.
Yes.
Criminality.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Chairman.
Escalated to involve acts of criminality.
Yes,
It
Mr.
doesn't necessarily mean that it ceased to be a labor dispute, but it's a labor dispute which is not escalated to involve acts of criminality. There is a distinction, a fine distinction, but there is a distinction.
Yes, I'll rephrase the question.
I think the distinction doesn't harm the point you're making in cross-examination, but I just try to get it clear that you are summarizing accurately what the witness said.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Minister, I want to take you to the first part of the statement. He shared his view that what was happening in Marikana could no longer be characterized as a labor dispute. Let's put a pause there. Did you agree with that statement? This is your own recollection of what happened.
Yes.
So you agreed that what was happening could no longer be characterized as a labor dispute.
Well, if you look at, I agree with him, but
Yes.
in particular, that's why I'm making an emphasis that this has escalated into act of criminality.
Yes, I'm going to deal with that. I'm just dealing with the first part of your statement because what you say is I agreed with him. Did you agree with him that what was happening could no longer be characterized as a labor dispute?
I agree.
Yes. Now, and then the next part is there are acts of criminality, and then you say you also agreed with that and that the acts of criminality should be dealt with accordingly. Can you see that?
Yes, I see.
Now, Minister, we have gone through this to establish exactly at what point did you change your mind. Can I put to you that the only point that you changed your mind about the characterization, the morning of the conversation with Mr. Gwala, you saw this as a labor dispute and it did not warrant the involvement of the Minister of Police. The conversation with Mr. Ramaphosa then changes your characterization of the situation. Now you see that it now requires the involvement of the police. Is that a fair statement to make?
It's a first statement. Why should I go public when I have not spoken? Because in my mind, when I went to Cape Town, Mr. Chairman, I was clear that I'm going to raise the matters with the President, but I could not raise it with the media before talking to the leadership.
You had raised the matter in the media in the sense that you'd appeared on a nationwide radio program and made certain statements, which you agree you made, in your interview with Mr. Gwala. So it wasn't with the media in general, but it was on a nationwide radio station. So everybody in the country who listens to AM Live in the morning would have known what you said. Isn't that right?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I stick or made sure that I talked to the labor dispute, more than the violence, because I wanted to get an opinion or hear what the president, are we agreeing on what is going on at that time. So I kept my point to a labor dispute, to the media.
Yes. Now, your characterization changed only after the conversation with the deputy president. Is that correct?
It had not changed.
Well, it included the criminal element, which was not included only after the conversation with the deputy president. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, it was not only after him. If you look at the statement I made in Brakpan, I did raise a concern about the deaths which had already occurred.
Yes. Well, the decision then to engage with the Minister of Police to take action only arose after the conversation with the deputy president. Is that correct?
Well, Mr. Chairman, it did not arise after I had a discussion with Mr. Ramaphosa. Some of the things I had kept in my mind, and I was looking forward to the CAB committee to raise some of my concerns too.
Yes. Well, it certainly manifested after that meeting, even if it was in your mind before. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree, Mr. Chairman. It did not manifest. I had it in my mind. Hence, I was looking forward to the Wednesday's meeting to raise it with the president and the minister.
Yes. Now, if in the morning of the 15th of August, your view, which was articulated publicly, was that this is a labor dispute to be resolved between the labor and management, did you know the fact that by the 14th of August, already 10 people had been killed, including 2 security guards and including 2 policemen?
Well, Mr. Chairman, that's a fact. It was in the paper. It was public knowledge.
And notwithstanding your knowledge about these deaths, you still took the view that this is primarily a labor matter which must be resolved between management and labor.
Well, up to the last point where the matter was resolved, it remained a labor dispute.
Yes. And your understanding about this being a labor dispute seems, and I want to go back to this for the last time, seems to change then after the conversation with the deputy president.
Mr. Chairman, I've indicated I've been consistent. It was a labor dispute, even after it continued to be a labor dispute, which was resolved through a labor process.
Yes. Now, can I move on then to the next part of my cross-examination? I have handed in a bundle of documents. I want to refer you to a report by the predecessor of IPID. It was called the ICD. Where is that?
What page in this thick bundle of documents is that?
It's apparently a number, Mr. Chairman. And
Sorry?
in the index.
The schedule of documents relied on by LRC contains a thick bundle. There are 26 numbered items. Now, which is the numbered item that you
Number 10, Mr. Chairman.
Number 10. That's IPID Research Report 2007.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so shall we make that quadruple Q5?
Quadruple.
IPID Research Report 2007.
3-5. Quadruple 5.
Quadruple Q5.
Quadruple Q 5. Yes. That's Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, Minister, you will remember that prior to you being the Minister of Minerals and Energy, you had held the position of Deputy Minister of Police.
That's correct.
Yes. And that was a 5-year position.
That's correct.
And you became the Minister of Minerals and Energy in, is it April 2009?
Mineral resources?
Mineral Resources in April 2009.
That's correct.
Yes. Now,
This document is quite a lengthy document, I see.
Yes.
And I also see, unless I'm looking in the wrong place, the pages don't appear to be paginated. Am I right?
yes, the pages are not paginated. I will be making reference to the pages in the actual report, to the numbers in the actual report, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I see the paragraph numbers. The paragraphs are numbered, I see. So
Well,
if you're going to refer to a particular paragraph Even if you can't give us the page number, you can give us the paragraph number so we can find it. Is that what you're going to do?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are page references at the bottom of the report. So like 2, 3, so that's what I'll be referring to.
Oh, I see. I was wrong. The pages are numbered.
Yes, they are numbered.
Okay, well then that's the answer. Thanks.
Yes, now, Minister, you will obviously remember the statement that you made. It generated a lot of press in April of 2008 about the police having to shoot criminals. You remember the statement, Minister?
Yes.
Yes. Now, I'll refer you to that statement later. Now, if you look at this report of the ICD, this was an investigation into the causes of people dying in the hands of the police. That's what it says on the cover page. Conducted in 2007. Can you see that?
I can see that.
May I ask what the relevance is of this line of questioning?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I will come back to it because
You've got to satisfy me that it's relevant before you
it's
allow you
relevant
to proceed.
in relation to the statements that were made by the Minister in April 2008. That
This report is 2007.
yes, it was in 2007. The fact that it existed in 2007 is relevant to the statements that were made in 2008. What I'm trying to illustrate is that the statements that were made in 2008 were inconsistent with the findings of the report, which must have been known to the Minister.
Well, how is that going to help us to answer the terms of reference of this commission? If the Minister made ill-considered remarks when she was Deputy Minister of Police, and these remarks that she made were not borne out by this investigation into deaths as a result of police action in KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape and Gauteng, issued by the Independent Complaints Directorate, that may or may not be so. But how's that going to help us? And we've got enough questions to answer in the terms of reference without taking extra questions aboard that the President hasn't asked us to deal with.
It's only one paragraph, Mr. Chairman, that I really want to make reference to. It relates to the causes of police shooting civilians that were identified already by 2007 and that generated a lot of publicity.
You know, I understand that. It may well be that you could put this before us as a document that you hand in, which we can deal with during the argument stage and during in our reports. But how's it going to help to put to the witness that the report says one thing, she said something else 4 years before the events at Marikana? Unless there's a connection, I don't think I should allow the questioning. We've got enough matters to look at as it is without extraneous factors or possibly extraneous factors.
I'm going to make one more proposal on the topic. Yeah. The passage I want to refer to is at page 50, and it is an explanation into the causes. Why do policemen kill civilians? And the heading there is one of the explanations given by IPIT. Page 50, and that's the first bullet point.
See that? They're criticizing, I take it,
And then
comments that this witness made when she was a deputy minister, comments which may have been singularly inappropriate and unfortunate, but I'm not directly sure, I'm not clearly in my mind, the direct relevance to our findings as to what she now may have to say to either justify or repent in respect to what she said.
Mr. Chairman, I've put the proposition, and the argument that will be made is that the statements contribute to the climate of brutality and unaccountability.
That point's been traversed in great detail earlier in these hearings of the Commission. The speech that the witness made and the speech that the Minister made, that we've spent a lot of time on them. They are before us, and we will obviously have to deal with such arguments as are based upon them. But my problem is I don't understand the relevance of asking this witness to either justify what she said or possibly to repent of what she said. It's not going to take us one way or further, is it, in relation to the questions we have to decide in relation to what happened in 2012. It may well be, but a climate, an unfortunate climate, of the reckless use of, inappropriate use of violence by the police in suppressing what they saw to be civil disorder contributed to the problems. And that's a matter, that's a nettle we'll have to grasp. and we will do so. But I fail to see how this witness, with all due deference and respect to her, can help us in that exercise.
Mr. Chairman, I will not pursue the point any further. I think the ruling is certainly implicit in the questions that you are asking.
You're correct.
Yes.
Mr. Bartels, I believe you turned your light on.
I was with my finger on the trigger, but I believe the problem has now been resolved because,
Yes.
as you have
Yes.
reminded our learned friend, it has been
okay.
traversed,
Okay,
and we don't need to
Yes.
take a formal
Mr.
objection.
Mpofu gets into trouble with the Commission for delivering concurring speeches after I've made rulings.
won't-
Please don't do the
I
same.
won't do that.
All right. Can I move on to the next
Can we
topic?
now then take the tea adjournment and you can move on to the next point?
Indeed, Mr.
And
Chairman.
we've been refreshed. We'll take a quarter of an hour tea adjournment.